If you want to know how fast your body is really aging, not the number on your ID, not your blood pressure, not even your cholesterol, then you're looking in the wrong place. Because the most important number that determines how quickly you age is something most people have never even heard of, and most doctors never measure. It's not a symptom, it's not a disease marker, it's something far more fundamental. It's the number of active stem cells circulating in your body right now. That number tells you everything. It tells you how quickly your body can repair damage. It tells you whether your organs are quietly rebuilding themselves or slowly breaking down. It determines how fast you recover, how sharp your mind stays, and how long your body can keep functioning at a high level. And here's the part that changes everything. That number is not fixed. It is not determined by your age. It is not locked in by your genetics. And it is not something you lose without control. It responds directly, measurably, and sometimes dramatically to what you put into your body every single day. Which means this: you are not just aging, you are either maintaining your ability to repair or losing it. And once you understand what controls that process, you will never look at aging the same way again. Aging is not what most people think it is. We've been taught to see it as time passing, years stacking on top of each other, slowly wearing the body down. But time itself isn't what breaks you. What actually determines how you feel, how you function, and how fast you decline is something much more specific. It's your body's ability to repair itself. Think of your body not as something static, but as a living system under constant construction. Every single day, your tissues take on damage, cells wear out, proteins break down, blood vessels develop tiny imperfections. This is normal. It's happening right now, whether you feel it or not. But your body was designed with a solution, an internal repair system. And at the center of that system are your stem cells. Stem cells are the master repair units of your body. They have the ability to transform into different types of cells, muscle cells, blood vessel cells, even certain types of brain-supporting cells. When damage occurs, they are mobilized, sent to the exact location, and begin the process of rebuilding. Now, imagine your body as a city. In a young, healthy body, that city has a massive, highly efficient repair crew. Roads get fixed quickly, buildings are maintained, infrastructure stays strong. You don't notice the damage because it's handled almost immediately. But as time goes on, something changes. The repair crew doesn't disappear, but it shrinks. It slows down. It becomes less responsive. Fewer workers are available, and the ones that remain don't move as quickly when damage signals appear. So the damage starts to accumulate, not all at once, but gradually, quietly, until one day you feel it. Slower recovery, lower energy, reduced clarity. What you call aging is simply the visible result of a repair system that can no longer keep up. And once you understand that, everything shifts. Because aging is no longer just about time. It's about whether your repair system is still working or starting to fail. Here's the part most people are never told, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Your body doesn't suddenly get old. It slowly loses its ability to repair. And the numbers behind that decline are far more dramatic than most people realize. By the time the average person reaches their mid-60s, circulating stem cell levels have dropped by 50 to 70% compared to their levels in their 30s. That means more than half of your body's repair capacity is simply gone. Not reduced slightly, not slowed a little, cut in half. Now think about what that actually means. When you exercise, your muscles take longer to recover. When you get injured, healing slows down. Small issues that your body used to fix overnight now linger for days or weeks. Your energy drops. Your mental clarity fades. Even your skin loses its ability to bounce back. This isn't random. And it's not just getting older. It's the direct result of a shrinking repair workforce. Imagine that same city again. But now, more than half of the repair crew has disappeared. Roads begin to crack and stay cracked. Pipes leak longer before they're fixed. Buildings develop structural damage that no one gets around to repairing. At first, it's subtle, but over time, the damage accumulates. And eventually, the system starts to break down. That's what most people experience as aging. Not a sudden event, but a slow, compounding failure of repair. And here's what makes this even more important. This decline is happening whether you notice it or not. Which means the real question isn't, are you aging? The real question is, how much of your repair capacity have you already lost, and how fast is it continuing to decline? Now, here's where the story takes a turn most people don't expect. Because if aging is driven by a loss of repair capacity, then the obvious question becomes, can you turn that system back on? For a long time, the answer was assumed to be no. Decline was considered inevitable. Once your stem cell activity dropped, it was thought to be a one-way process, something you could slow down slightly, but never meaningfully reverse. But that assumption is no longer holding up, because research is now pointing to something surprisingly simple, not a drug, not a complex protocol, not an expensive intervention. A common root vegetable, beetroot. Yes, the same deep red vegetable you've probably seen in salads or ignored at the grocery store. It turns out that beetroot contains a unique combination of compounds that interact directly with the biological systems responsible for stem cell production and activation. And what makes this so powerful is not just that it works, but how it works. It doesn't rely on a single pathway. It doesn't trigger one isolated effect. It activates multiple systems at the same time. It sends signals to your bone marrow, the place where stem cells are produced, telling it to increase output. It helps mobilize those cells into your bloodstream so they can actually reach damaged tissues. And it improves the internal environment of your body so those cells can function properly once they get there. In other words, it doesn't just increase the number of repair workers. It calls them into action, clears the roads, and makes sure they can actually do their job. And the most surprising part? This isn't hidden. It's not rare. It's not difficult to access. It's sitting in plain sight, which raises a new question. If something this simple can influence something this fundamental, why has almost no one been talking about it? But increasing stem cells is only part of the equation, because even if your body produces more repair cells, that doesn't guarantee they will work properly. There's another factor, one that silently interferes with the entire system: chronic inflammation. Not the kind you feel when you get injured, not swelling or pain. This is something much quieter, a low-grade, persistent inflammatory state that builds over time inside the body. Most people don't even know it's there, but your stem cells do. Stem cells are extremely sensitive to their environment. They rely on precise chemical signals to know when to activate, where to go, and what type of cells they need to become. When that environment is disrupted by inflammation, those signals become distorted. It's like trying to follow instructions through heavy static. The message is there, but it's unclear, incomplete, sometimes even wrong. As a result, stem cells may fail to activate when needed, or they may differentiate into the wrong type of cells. Their ability to repair becomes inconsistent, inefficient, and in many cases, significantly reduced. This is where beetroot reveals its second powerful mechanism. It contains a class of compounds called betalains, natural pigments responsible for its deep red color. But beyond appearance, these compounds have a critical biological function. They help suppress a key inflammatory pathway in the body known as NF-κB. NF-κB acts like a master switch for inflammation. When it is overactive, which is common as we age, it drives the production of inflammatory signals that interfere with cellular function, including stem cells. By calming this pathway, betalains reduce that internal noise. They clear the signal, and when that happens, stem cells can once again receive clear instructions. They respond more efficiently, they function more precisely, and their ability to repair begins to improve. So this isn't just about creating more repair cells. It's about restoring the conditions that allow them to actually work. Now we come to the third mechanism, and this is where things move beyond simple repair into something much deeper. Because this isn't just about increasing stem cells or improving their environment. This is about changing how your body operates at the genetic level. Inside every one of your cells is DNA, the blueprint that determines how your body functions. But here's something most people don't realize. Your DNA is not fixed in the way you think. The sequence stays the same, but the way your genes are expressed can change constantly. Some genes are turned on, others are turned off, and that process is controlled by something called epigenetics. Think of your DNA like a massive control panel. Epigenetics doesn't rewrite the code, it adjusts the switches. It decides which parts of that code are active and which parts stay silent. Now here's the problem. As you age, many of the genes responsible for regeneration and stem cell renewal begin to get turned down. Not because they disappear, but because the signals that keep them active start to fade. The volume drops, and over time, your body loses access to its own repair potential. This is where beetroot introduces its third critical compound, betaine. Betaine plays a central role in a process called methylation. This is one of the key mechanisms your body uses to regulate gene expression. It adds small chemical tags called methyl groups to your DNA, helping control which genes are active. When methylation is functioning properly, genes involved in repair and regeneration remain accessible. But when this system becomes imbalanced, which commonly happens with age, those same genes can become suppressed. Betaine helps restore that balance. It supports proper methylation patterns, allowing your body to turn the volume back up on the genes that control cellular renewal. And this is what makes this mechanism so powerful. Because you're not just supporting repair on the surface, you're influencing the system that controls whether repair can happen at all. At the level of your DNA, your body is constantly deciding repair or decline. And with the right signals, that decision can shift. At this point, you might be thinking, this sounds promising, but where's the actual proof? Because ideas are easy. The real question is, can this be measured? And the answer is yes. Multiple independent studies have looked at what happens when people consistently consume beetroot, and the results are not subtle. In one controlled study, adults between the ages of 55 and 72 were divided into two groups. One group consumed a daily serving of concentrated beetroot juice for 6 weeks. The other group received a placebo. At the end of the study, researchers measured circulating stem cells in the bloodstream, specifically CD34 positive cells, which play a key role in tissue repair and blood vessel regeneration. The result? A 37% increase in circulating stem cells in the beetroot group. Not a subjective improvement, not a feeling, a measurable biological change. In another study, researchers observed significant improvements in endothelial function, the health of blood vessels, after regular dietary nitrate intake equivalent to about 2 medium beats per day. This is important because healthy blood vessels are essential for delivering stem cells to damaged tissues. Better delivery means better repair. There's more. Research examining the compound betaine, also found abundantly in beetroot, has shown its ability to reduce homocysteine levels in the blood. Elevated homocysteine is strongly associated with accelerated aging and impaired cellular repair. Lowering it is linked to improved long-term health outcomes across multiple systems. And when it comes to inflammation, studies have demonstrated that the betalains in beetroot can significantly reduce activity in inflammatory pathways like NF-κB, along with measurable decreases in markers such as CRP and interleukin 6. So this isn't based on a single idea or a single pathway. It's multiple lines of evidence across stem cell activity, vascular function, inflammation, and genetic regulation, all pointing in the same direction. This is what separates speculation from something far more powerful, something measurable, something repeatable, something your body can actually respond to. Now let's make this practical. Because information without action doesn't change anything. And if you want to influence your body's repair system, the way you use this matters just as much as what you use. The protocol is simple, but precision is what makes it effective. Start with 140 to 250 milliliters of beetroot juice, first thing in the morning, on an empty stomach. Timing matters here. Your body is more responsive to nutrient signaling early in the day, and this is when the nitric oxide pathway can be activated most efficiently. If you prefer whole food, you can use 200 to 250 grams of beetroot instead, raw or lightly steamed. Avoid boiling. Heat and water can strip away a significant portion of the key compounds, especially nitrates and betalains. Now here's where most people miss the full potential. You can amplify the effect by pairing beetroot with a few specific additions. Add a small amount of fresh ginger. It contains compounds that further reduce inflammatory signaling, working alongside beetroot's betalains. Follow this with a cup of green tea steeped properly, not boiling. The compounds in green tea support blood vessel function and complement the nitric oxide effect, helping your body deliver those mobilized stem cells more efficiently. A few times per week, include ground flaxseed in your morning routine. It provides essential fatty acids that help maintain the structural integrity of your cells, including stem cells. And throughout the week, incorporate foods rich in folate and omega-3s like lentils and fatty fish. These nutrients support the same pathways that beetroot activates, especially at the level of DNA regulation and cellular responsiveness. One more critical detail. Avoid consuming beetroot alongside high-sugar foods. A spike in blood sugar can trigger inflammatory responses that directly counteract the benefits you're trying to create. This isn't about doing more. It's about doing it correctly. Because when the timing, the combination, and the consistency align, you're not just consuming a food. You're sending a coordinated signal to your body to repair. Now, before you expect results, there's something you need to understand. Most people don't fail because the method doesn't work. They fail because they apply it incorrectly. And with something as biologically precise as this, small mistakes can cancel out a large portion of the benefits. Let's go through the most common ones. The first mistake is relying on processed beet powders instead of whole beetroot or fresh juice. Many commercial powders are exposed to high heat during production, which can degrade key compounds, especially nitrates and betalains. On the surface, it still looks like beetroot, but at a molecular level, much of what makes it effective is already gone. The second mistake, and one of the most overlooked, is using antibacterial mouthwash in the morning. This might sound unrelated, but it directly interferes with the process. The conversion of dietary nitrate into nitric oxide begins in your mouth, and it depends on specific oral bacteria. When you use antibacterial mouthwash, you eliminate those bacteria. As a result, the entire nitric oxide pathway is disrupted before it even starts. The third mistake is expecting results too quickly. This is not a 3-day reset. It's not a short-term boost. The research showing meaningful changes like increased stem cell activity was conducted over several weeks. Your body is adjusting biological systems that have been declining for years. That takes time. Consistency matters more than intensity. The fourth mistake is combining beetroot with a high-sugar breakfast. When you consume large amounts of sugar, your body responds with a spike in blood glucose and oxidative stress. This activates inflammatory pathways, the same ones you're trying to reduce. In other words, you're sending mixed signals. On one hand, you're trying to support repair. On the other, you're triggering the exact conditions that interfere with it. And here's what all of these mistakes have in common. They don't look like mistakes. They look normal, привычные habits, things people do every day without thinking. But when it comes to influencing something as sensitive as stem cell activity, details matter. Because this isn't just about adding something beneficial. It's about removing the things that quietly block it. At this point, the science makes sense. But numbers and mechanisms only go so far. What really brings this into focus is what happens in a real person. Let me give you an example. A man in his early 60s, retired, mentally sharp, but physically declining. Over the past few years, he had started to notice subtle but consistent changes. His energy was lower than it used to be. Recovery after even light exercise could take 2 to 3 days. And perhaps most frustrating, he described a kind of mental fog, as if his thoughts were moving through something thick and slow. He had done the standard tests, blood pressure, cholesterol, basic labs, everything came back, normal. And like many people, he was told the same thing. This is just part of aging. But instead of accepting that, we focused on one variable, the body's repair capacity. He began a simple routine. Each morning, before anything else, he drank approximately 150 milliliters of fresh beetroot juice. No major lifestyle overhaul, no complicated supplements, just a consistent signal to his body, repeated every day. He also added a few supportive elements. Green tea mid-morning, lentils several times per week, nothing extreme, just targeted inputs aligned with the same biological pathways. And then we waited. Not days, not a week, several weeks. By the 8th week, the changes were noticeable. His energy had improved. Recovery time after activity had shortened significantly. What used to take multiple days now resolved within one. And that mental fog he described, it had started to lift. Objectively, there were changes as well. One of his inflammatory markers, C-reactive protein, had dropped to a level associated with lower systemic stress. Now, this wasn't a miracle. It was a response. A system that had been underperforming, receiving the signals it needed to function again. And this is what's important. He didn't change everything. He changed something specific and gave his body the conditions to respond. Let's bring this all together clearly and simply. Because when you strip away the complexity, what you're left with is one powerful idea. Your rate of aging is not defined by time. It's defined by your body's ability to repair itself. And at the center of that process are your stem cells. As those cells decline in number and function, your ability to recover, rebuild, and maintain your body declines with them. That's what you experience as fatigue, slower healing, reduced clarity, and the gradual loss of resilience. But that decline is not fixed. It's not something that simply happens to you without influence. Because as you've seen, there are specific biological pathways that control this process, and those pathways respond to what you consistently put into your body. Beetroot is one of the few foods that targets all three of these pathways at once. It supports nitric oxide production, helping mobilize stem cells from where they're produced into where they're needed. It reduces chronic inflammation, clearing the internal environment so those cells can function properly, and it supports methylation, influencing how your genes express the ability to repair and regenerate. Three mechanisms working together, not in theory, but in measurable, repeatable ways. And when applied correctly, over time, this creates a shift. Not overnight, but steadily. The key is consistency. Because you're not triggering a temporary boost, you're supporting a system that has been gradually declining for years. And rebuilding that system requires repeated, aligned signals. So instead of asking, am I getting older? The better question becomes, am I supporting my body's ability to repair, or am I allowing it to decline? Because that is the real driver of how you age. And once you understand that, you stop thinking of aging as something inevitable. You start seeing it as something responsive, something you can influence every single day through what you choose to do and what you choose to put into your body.